Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine it is 2 o'clock in the morning. You have a massive presentation at work tomorrow, but your upstairs neighbor is pacing, dropping heavy objects, and walking around in what sounds like bowling shoes. You are exhausted, but you're also terrified of starting an apartment war if you complain. What do you do? Welcome back to the channel. Here, we look at how real people solve real-life problems, all while helping you naturally improve your listening and vocabulary. Today, we're starting a brand new 10-chapter story called The Neighbor's Noise. We'll follow our main character as he battles sleep deprivation, navigates the anxiety of confrontation, and tries to find a peaceful solution to a noisy situation. Pay close attention to the everyday idioms and expressions we use in this episode. If you're ready to test your listening skills and find out how to handle a difficult neighbor, hit that subscribe button and let's dive in to Chapter 1.
It was 2 in the morning, and Noah was staring wide awake at his ceiling. He had to be at the office in exactly 6 hours for the most important presentation of his career. If he messed this up, his chances at the promotion were gone. He closed his eyes and tried to clear his mind, but it was completely impossible. Thud. Above him, a heavy object hit the floor. Then came the footsteps. Stomp, stomp, stomp. It sounded like his upstairs neighbor was pacing back and forth across the apartment in heavy boots. Noah groaned and pulled the pillow over his ears, but it did nothing to block out the noise. The ceiling creaked rhythmically, driving him crazy. This had been going on for 3 consecutive weeks. Noah was running on fumes, surviving entirely on extra-large coffees and sheer willpower. Every single night, the midnight symphony began. He knew he had to do something, but a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach every time he thought about it. Noah hated confrontation. What if he went up there to complain and made an enemy? Living directly under someone who hated you sounded like an actual nightmare. He didn't want to start an apartment war. Thud! Another loud noise echoed through the bedroom, shaking the light fixture. Noah's heart raced with a mix of anger and fear. Should he go up right now? Should he knock on the ceiling with a broom? He lay there paralyzed in the dark, caught between the desperate need for sleep and the terrifying fear of making things worse.
The alarm went off at 8 o'clock, sounding like a drilling machine inside Noah's head. He dragged his feet out of bed, feeling completely dead on his feet after only 2 hours of sleep. His eyes were bloodshot, and his reflection in the bathroom mirror looked like a character from a horror movie. He threw on his best suit, grabbed his briefcase, and rushed out the door without even having time to brush his hair properly. The subway ride to the city center was a blur of noise, motion, and intense anxiety. Noah bought the largest black coffee available at the corner cafe, desperately hoping the caffeine would kick in before his meeting. He arrived at the corporate office with 20 minutes to spare, his hands shaking slightly as he plugged his laptop into the main projector. The conference room quickly filled with senior executives, including Mr. Davis, the company vice president who held the power to grant the promotion. Noah began his presentation, but within 5 minutes, his sleep-deprived brain started to betray him. He stumbled over basic financial statistics, mixing up the quarterly revenue figures on slide number 4. Mr. Davis frowned, leaning forward in his leather chair and crossing his arms tightly. Noah tried to correct his mistake, but his tongue felt incredibly heavy, and his thoughts were completely disorganized. He managed to finish the presentation, but the polite, lukewarm applause from the board members told him everything he needed to know. After the meeting ended, Mr. Davis walked up to him and said that they would discuss the promotion next month instead. Noah sat down at his desk in the empty cubicle, staring blankly at his computer screen as a wave of deep frustration washed over him. The lack of sleep wasn't just making him tired anymore. It was actively ruining his professional life and destroying his future career goals. He realized with absolute certainty that doing nothing was no longer an option, and he had to address the problem tonight.
By 9 o'clock that evening, Noah was sitting on his couch, staring anxiously up at the white ceiling plaster. The apartment was perfectly quiet for the moment, but the tense silence only made his heart beat faster. He found himself waiting for the noise to start, his mind twisting the unknown neighbor into a cartoonish villain. In his head, the person living in apartment 4B wasn't just a regular tenant, they were a deliberate monster. He imagined a professional bowler practicing their throws in the hallway, or perhaps a clumsy giant wearing metal shoes. The lack of sleep was fueling his imagination, turning a simple structural issue into a personal vendetta against him. Determined to put a real face to his tormentor, Noah quietly opened his front door and crept down the carpeted hallway toward the lobby. The building's mailboxes were lined up against the wall near the entrance, each one labeled with a small plastic nameplate. He approached box 4B with cautious steps, looking around nervously to ensure none of the other residents saw him lurking. The nameplate read C. Vance in clean printed letters, offering absolutely no clues about who the person actually was. Was Vance a college student throwing wild late-night parties? Or maybe an eccentric artist working on heavy sculptures until dawn? He stood there staring at the brass lock, feeling a strange mix of deep curiosity and intense intimidation. The anonymity of the name made the situation feel even more dangerous, stripping away any easy way to predict a reaction. He walked back up the stairs, his mind racing with terrifying scenarios of what might happen if he knocked on that door. If he encountered a hostile, aggressive stranger, his living situation could easily transform from uncomfortable to unlivable. Just as he reached his own front door, a massive, heavy vibration echoed from directly above his kitchen area. The nightly routine had officially begun right on schedule, and the monstrous imagery in Noah's mind felt more real than ever.
Noah stood in his kitchen at 1 a.m. holding a blue pen over a blank piece of paper. The ceiling above him vibrated with another heavy thud, followed by the familiar pacing sound. He decided that a written note was the safest option because it allowed him to speak without facing immediate anger. He sat down at the table and wrote his first draft, pouring all of his anger into the words. Dear neighbor, your constant late-night stomping is ruining my life and making me fail at my job. Stop being so incredibly selfish and quiet down immediately. He read it over, shook his head, and quickly tore the paper into small pieces, realizing it would instantly start an apartment war. He took a deep breath and tried a second approach, trying to sound as polite and non-threatening as possible. Hi there. I am so sorry to bother you, but I live downstairs and sometimes hear little noises at night. It is totally fine, but if you could maybe be a tiny bit quieter, I would really appreciate it. Sorry again. Noah looked at the second draft and groaned, recognizing that it sounded too weak and probably would be completely ignored. He needed to find the perfect balance between being respectful of their space and firm about his own need for sleep. He pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and carefully composed a third version, choosing his words with extreme caution. Hello, neighbor in 4B. I hope you are having a good week.
My name is Noah, and I live directly below you in apartment 3B. I wanted to gently let you know that the building's floors are quite thin, and the footsteps and heavy sounds travel downstairs after midnight. I have some important morning commitments for my career, and the late-night noise makes it very difficult for me to sleep. I would be incredibly grateful if you could keep the floor activity to a minimum during the late hours. Thank you so much for your understanding." He signed his name at the bottom, folded the paper into a neat square, and walked quietly out into the dimly lit hallway. His heart hammered against his ribs as he stood before door 4B, carefully sliding the note into the narrow gap at the bottom. He sprinted back to his own apartment, locking the door behind him and hoping this simple message would solve everything.
The next morning, Noah checked his ceiling with cautious optimism, but his hope was completely destroyed when night arrived. By midnight, the heavy pacing and occasional thuds returned to apartment 4B exactly as they had before. The note had failed completely, and Noah felt a sudden rush of desperate courage mixed with absolute exhaustion. He couldn't survive another week without sleep, so he threw on a jacket and walked up the stairs before he could change his mind. His hands shook as he stood in front of door 4B, and he forced himself to knock firmly 3 times. He held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs as he waited for a giant, angry stranger to open the door. Instead, the lock clicked and the door swung open to reveal a young woman holding a thick medical textbook. She had dark circles under her eyes, her hair was tied in a messy bun, and she looked just as exhausted as Noah felt. "Oh, hello," she said softly, blinking at him in confusion. "Can I help you with something?" Noah's anger evaporated instantly, replaced by utter surprise as he realized this was the monster he had imagined. "Hi, my name is Noah from apartment 3B, he stammered, clearing his throat. "I think you might have received my note." "Your note?" she asked, looking puzzled, before her eyes widened in sudden realization. "Oh no, did it slide under the rug?" She looked down at the floor behind her, where a thick welcome mat completely covered the bottom gap of the doorway. "I am so sorry, I haven't checked under there," she explained quickly, looking genuinely stressed. "I'm Chloe, by the way." Noah took a deep breath, realizing that his terrifying villain was just another person trying to survive their own long days. "I am so incredibly glad you knocked," Chloe said, opening her door a bit wider to show her small living room. Noah looked past her and saw a desk piled high with medical folders, flashcards, and a laptop glowing in the dim light. "I am a resident doctor at the city hospital," she explained, rubbing her tired eyes. "I work the late shift, so my day actually starts at midnight." Noah's jaw dropped slightly as he realized why her schedule was so unusual. "I had absolutely no idea the floors were this thin," Chloe continued, looking genuinely horrified. "I usually pace around while I'm memorizing surgical procedures." "Ah, that explains the rhythmic walking," Noah said, a wave of relief washing over him because she wasn't angry at all. "And the loud thuds?" he asked gently, wanting to solve the whole mystery now that the ice was broken. Chloe laughed nervously and pointed to a set of heavy ankle weights resting near her desk. "I use those to stay awake and exercise while studying. They must sound like bowling balls dropping onto your ceiling." Noah smiled, feeling the last bit of his anxiety disappear. It did sound a bit like a bowling alley, to be honest. They stood in the hallway for a few minutes, discussing their schedules and trying to understand each other's situations. Chloe promised to be much more careful, and Noah thanked her profusely before walking back down to his apartment. He climbed into bed feeling victorious, confident that his sleepless nights were finally over. However, an hour later, the soft but distinct sound of footsteps started up again above his head. Chloe was clearly trying to walk softly, but the old wooden building simply couldn't block out the motion. Noah sighed into his pillow, realizing that a pleasant conversation hadn't completely solved the physical reality of the problem.
Noah lay awake in the dark, listening to the muffled thuds above and feeling a deep sense of dread. He knew Chloe was trying her best to be quiet, but the old apartment building offered absolutely no sound insulation. By the next afternoon, Noah was sitting at his desk, staring at a blank email addressed to the building's property manager. Involving the landlord was the official next step, but the thought of filing a formal complaint made his stomach twist with anxiety. If management sent an official warning letter to apartment 4B, Chloe would instantly know it came from him. The friendly understanding they had built in the hallway would be destroyed, and she might view him as a sneaky enemy. He opened his lease agreement on his computer screen, carefully reading through the building's strict noise policies and tenant regulations. The legal terms like breach of contract and disturbance of quiet enjoyment looked cold and aggressive on the screen. Noah stared at the send button on his email draft, his index finger hovering over the mouse for several minutes. He desperately needed consistent sleep to save his career, but he didn't want to become the type of neighbor who uses authority to bully others. If he started a paperwork war, Chloe might stop trying to be careful altogether, making his nights even louder out of pure spite. He closed the email browser and put his head in his hands, realizing that involving management was a dangerous gamble. There had to be a human solution to this problem that didn't involve landlords, legal warnings, or broken relationships. He decided to give their neighborly connection one more chance, refusing to let fear push him into a hostile escalation.
Noah spent the weekend researching home improvement solutions instead of focusing on building regulations. On Monday evening, he walked up to apartment 4B holding a small brown paper bag and a rolled-up bundle under his arm. He knocked on the door, and Chloe opened it, looking slightly defensive as if she expected another complaint. "Hi, Chloe. I brought you a little peace offering," Noah said with a friendly smile, holding out the paper bag. She opened it to find a box of premium herbal tea and a set of high-quality, comfortable foam earplugs. "The tea is for your long night shifts, and the earplugs are for me, so you don't have to feel like a prisoner in your own home," he explained. Chloe's defensive expression melted into a look of pure gratitude. "Noah, that is incredibly sweet of you. I've been so stressed about waking you up." Noah then unrolled the large bundle under his arm, revealing a thick, heavy area rug made of dense wool. "I found this online. If we put this under your desk and pacing area, it will absorb the vibrations before they hit my ceiling." "That is a brilliant idea," Chloe said, her eyes lighting up. "Let's put it down right now." Noah stepped inside, and together they moved her heavy desk and laid the thick woolen rug across the old wooden floorboards. They tested it immediately, with Chloe walking across the room while Noah listened carefully to the difference. The dense wool completely muffled the impact of her footsteps, transforming the sharp thuds into barely audible thumps. Noah thanked her for being so cooperative, feeling a massive weight lift off his shoulders as he walked back downstairs. He had managed to solve the problem without creating an enemy, proving that a little kindness and practical teamwork could conquer any conflict.
That night, Noah climbed into bed and turned on a small white noise machine on his nightstand. The gentle sound of rushing air filled his bedroom, creating a protective blanket against any outside disturbances.
Upstairs, Chloe was sitting at her desk on the new wool rug working through her medical flashcards. She had agreed to leave her heavy ankle weights off until her hospital shifts, changing her workout routine completely. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Noah heard a very faint, muffled thump from the ceiling above him. It wasn't the sharp, loud thud that used to shake his light fixture and make his heart race with anger. Instead, it was just a dull, distant vibration that his mind could easily ignore. He realized that expecting absolute perfect silence in an old city apartment building was simply unrealistic. The key to his peace of mind wasn't eliminating every single sound, it was knowing that his neighbor was actively respecting him. Because he knew Chloe was doing her best, the occasional tiny thump didn't trigger his anxiety anymore. He closed his eyes, let his muscles relax completely into the mattress, and took a deep, slow breath. The combination of the thick rug upstairs and the white noise machine downstairs created the perfect compromise. Both of them had adjusted their daily habits slightly to accommodate each other's very different lives. As the minutes passed, Noah felt himself drifting off into a deep, peaceful sleep for the first time in an entire month. He had managed to reclaim his nights not through legal battles or angry arguments, but through mutual respect and communication. The alarm went off at 7 o'clock the next morning, and Noah opened his eyes feeling completely transformed. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel like a character in a horror movie. He felt fully rested, energized, and sharp. He arrived at the corporate office early, walking into the morning boardroom meeting with absolute confidence radiating from his posture. When it was his turn to speak, his voice was clear, his presentation was flawless, and he handled the financial data with total precision. Mr. Davis looked up from his notes, nodding with genuine approval as the rest of the executive board clapped enthusiastically. After the meeting ended, the vice president shook Noah's hand firmly and told him that the promotion was officially his, starting next week. A massive wave of relief and triumph washed over Noah as he walked out of the office building into the bright afternoon sun. That evening, as he walked into the apartment lobby holding a small bag of groceries, the elevator doors slid open. Chloe stepped out, wearing her blue hospital scrubs and carrying her heavy backpack, looking ready for another long night shift. "Hey, Noah," she said, a warm and friendly smile instantly lighting up her tired face. "How is the ceiling situation?" "Perfect," Noah replied with a grin, holding up a thumb. "The rug works like magic. I slept like a baby last night." "I am so glad to hear that," she said, letting out a sigh of relief. "Have a wonderful, quiet night." "Thanks, Chloe. Good luck with your shift at the hospital," said Noah as they passed each other in the brightly lit lobby. He walked up the stairs to his apartment, realizing how incredibly glad he was that he hadn't started an unnecessary apartment war. By tackling his social anxiety and choosing communication over confrontation, he hadn't just saved his career and reclaimed his sleep. He had transformed a terrifying, imaginary monster into a supportive ally, proving that real-life problems are always best solved together. That brings us to the end of our story. Noah's situation is something many of us face in real life. When we are stressed and tired, it is very easy to turn the people around us into villains or monsters in our minds. We worry that speaking up will start a war, so we stay silent until we are ready to explode. But, as Noah discovered, most people aren't trying to make our lives difficult. They just don't realize there is a problem. By choosing polite communication and practical teamwork instead of anger or passive-aggressive notes, he fixed the issue and made a friend. If you enjoyed watching Noah and Chloe solve this neighbor dilemma, make sure to give this video a thumbs up.
Have you ever had to deal with a noisy neighbor or a difficult situation in your apartment? Let me know in the comments below how you handled it. It is a fantastic way to practice your English writing skills. Don't forget to check the video description below for the full vocabulary list and idioms from today's episode so you can study them later. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next real-life story. Thank you so much for listening and learning with me today, and I will see you in the next story. Goodbye.